How many out there believe in demons or being haunted by ghosts? Today I'm going to share a story by one man who claims he's been haunted by a demon several times. Sit back and try to relax as we get started. I overcame being haunted by a demon. I have only shared this story with a handful of people, but I suppose I am comfortable talking about it now. Back in 2009, I was located in Bakwa, Afghanistan, on top of a hill surrounded by a cemetery. Now, they don't bury their dead like we do in the States. Instead, they lay their loved ones on the dirt and cover them with piles of rocks with simple stick-torn clothing as markers for them to visit later on. I was on my post standing watch. It was roughly 02:45. At this time, I had been on post since midnight. A rock the size of a golf ball just smacked the bulletproof glass above my machine gun. I used my night vision and thermal imaging to see if anyone was out in front of my post trying to get my attention, and nothing but darkness could I see. I calmed my nerves and drank a few sips of water, and about 10 minutes had passed, then BAM! Another rock, slightly bigger this time, smacked the same glass. I called the command center, informing them of my situation, and asked if they could use the thermal camera from their position to see if anyone was near my post, and he informed me nothing was there. So my mind slightly more weary and on alert. I waited, planning on what I would do if it happened a third time. I would exit my post immediately and fire an illumination round into the sky, lighting up my entire area. About 15 minutes had passed, and then bang! Another rock the size of a tennis ball smashes through my window. Rocks hitting me in the chest of my flak jacket, pebbles and dust scattering all over my machine gun. So I decided I must fire this illume round and find out what's going on once and for all. As I turn around, there behind me in the corner of my post, a towering creature stood. He was at least 11 feet tall. He froze me in place. I wasn't able to speak, scream, breathe, blink. He was in control of me. He even controlled my fear. As it stood there, with the deep red eyes, I could only make out certain things about him. He had 12 total horns, 3 in each side of his face, and 3 coming out of each shoulder. He had craters in his face that bugs would crawl out of and into another. His arms were roughly 4 feet long. His hands were giant finger claws, and all of his fingers came to a very sharp, fine point. His hands were the size of my chest, just terrifying to look at. We just stood there, staring at each other for what felt like an eternity. Water rushing from my eyes from the pain of not being able to blink, until he finally let me blink. Upon that happening, he was gone instantly. I gasped for air and jumped from that 10-foot-high post, skipping the ladder completely, and ran straight to the command center. I told him and only him what I experienced up on that post. I was in Bakwa for an additional 30 days, never once ever looking back towards that post, day or night. It's not that I never wanted to share my story, I was just afraid if I spoke of it he would come back. In 2011 he did. Okay, 2 years ago had passed since the undoubtedly most terrifying experience I had in my life. This time I was in training exercise in the middle of the Mojave Desert. I had this unsettling feeling through the last few days, and I couldn't understand why. It wasn't so much a sick or nauseous feeling, but more like my senses had been heightened, and I could feel the presence of sadness overwhelm me periodically throughout the day. I would catch myself staring into the distance, trying to put my finger on what was going on with me. It had been almost 2 years now since my last encounter. I was back home in the States at this point, so he never came to mind. On the third night of not being able to shake off this feeling, I laid down on my cot. We slept in a dome-shaped metal building with concrete for a floor. I finally drifted off to sleep. As I laid there, sound asleep on my cot, had been what felt like someone at the foot of it kicked it with all of their might. I instantly woke up and looked at my watch, which said exactly 3:01. There was one guy awake on either side of the building who was standing watch. The whole building was pitch black, aside from the 2 glowing red exit signs, one just above his head. I rolled over onto my left side, and there he was, up in the corner of the building, both arms along the length of the walls and his legs tucked into his chest. His bright red eyes froze my body in place, and the overwhelming amount of fear that overcame my body still to this day gives me goosebumps. I tried calling out to the Marine across the way, but I couldn't speak. I cried out with all my might, but not one sound could escape my mouth. My eyes fixated on him, not being able to blink, breathe, or move. It felt like an eternity all over again. He never said a word, never made a sound, but he doesn't have to. His presence is enough, and he knows that. After some time, he simply vanished, and I was able to move again. I lifted my head off the soaking wet pillow, turned face down, and prayed until I passed out from exhaustion. My third encounter was again another summer month in 2013. 4 years from the first encounter, and 2 years since my second. I was going through a rough patch in my life. I was getting ready to deploy for the fourth time, and was going through a rough divorce. My ex-wife was asleep upstairs in our bedroom, and I was watching TV in the living room before bed. I finished up for the night and shut off the lights and TV. The only light left on was the one on the microwave. I fell asleep shortly after laying down on the couch and drifted into a dream. I was back in high school, sitting in the cafeteria with my friends at the time. I had just finished my meal and looked up smiling from my tray, when out in front of me, standing between the two double doors about 60 feet from me, was the figure. The sight scared me out of my sleep, but I was still stuck in my dream. My eyes could see my living room and the timid light from the kitchen over my left shoulder. My front blinds and the street light from the outside shining through it in split sections. I could see my ceiling. Everything around me was crystal clear. I was just unable to move my arms or my legs. I couldn't blink. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move no matter how hard I tried or fought it. Now, even though I could see my living room, I was still stuck in his horrible presence. My thought process was, he's far enough away that maybe I can get away. Back in the cafeteria, I stood from my table to dispose the tray and escaped through the door to my left. As my left foot hit the plane of the doorway, his left hand grabbed my shoulder, and I cried out in pain. Each of his fingers were as big as my hand. His nails were roughly an inch long on each fingertip. As he laid his fingers into my shoulder, his nails pierced my skin, the first 4 fingers driving into my ribs, breaking them as he rips through my lung and making their way back through my chest and out my back. His thumb driving into my back muscles, straight through my spine, snapping it into pieces. I'm crying out in pain as I lay awake in my living room, tears pouring down my face as I remember trying to gasp once for air. The sheer pain of this allows me to blink finally, and I'm back in my dream. But we are walking down a road in the middle of the desert. His body out in front of me, and my body is dragged face down across the pavement. I can feel my skin on the face being ripped off my skull as he continues to walk down the road, his arm fully extended, pushing me towards the ground to inflict more pain, slowly applying more pressure to his hands so they go deeper and deeper into my body, breaking more ribs as he walks. We finally come to a row of Joshua trees along the road. He stops and looks right at the huge weeping willow just off the side of the road, and drags me through the sand towards it, tosses my body like a rag doll at the tree. I'm now laying on my back, just like I am on the couch, face up, hands at my side, legs straight out, feet towards him. The sun begins to rise in the distance between 2 mountains. He takes a few steps forward, embracing the heat of the sun, raising his arms up, extending them out to the sides. I can see the entire outline of this figure, and I will never forget the smell of his burnt flesh emitting off his body as the breeze passes through him. He turns around and faces me with those huge glowing red eyes. Feel like they're burning a hole through me. All I want in this moment is to be able to close my eyes so I don't have to see him. But that's not an option, because my body will not allow it. He raises his left hand, opening his fingers widely as he swings his arms towards me. Hoping he will not kill me with this blow, his hand drives into the root of the tree that I'm leaning against and rips out the bottom section. He tosses it to the sides as millions of red and black ants pour from the bottom of this tree. The ants immediately and start gulping my body, crawling under me as if they were going to carry me away. What seems like all at once, he gives them permission to start consuming my body. I can feel every bite from each and every one of them biting into me, as he stands there watching me suffer. I can still feel my brain telling my body to move around, but my body still won't allow it. My eyes feel like they haven't shut in an hour. My pillow is so soaked from tears you could wring it out. He walks towards me, placing one leg on each side of my body. He tilts his head towards the sky, opening his mouth, exposing his giant fang-like teeth, and bends at the waist, screaming on his way down towards my body. Just before he gets to my face, I snap out of the paralysis and run to my kitchen, screaming in pain from the ant bites. I can still feel them crawling on me at this point. I flip on the lights while running to the kitchen sink and turn the water on, using the hose to spray my body down in the middle of the floor. My ex-wife comes down the stairs, screaming at me in a panic of what's going on. A few months later, I was having a dream of someone guiding me towards a black box that I sent home from my second tour in Afghan. They led me to the box in my garage, where it was actually kept, and inside the box was a smaller box. Just as I was opening it, I woke up to a voice saying, "Salvation." Now, a little backstory. Prior to every foot patrol I ever went on, during the 15 months I've spent in that country, I always worn a bandana that printed out on the bandana was Psalms 91. The next day I went into the garage to open the box, and inside it was my bandana. A week or so later, I tattooed this on my chest. I have yet to ever encounter him again. I was terrified, all of 2017, knowing he visited me every 2 years. But time has passed on, which is why I'm comfortable speaking about this now. Man, that story was intense, guys. Do you think it was a demon, or do you think he was suffering from sleep paralysis? Either way, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. Thank you all for listening.